I'm going to do a demo of some of the formulas you need for questions 1 and 2 in the warm-up exercise for the Kickstarter module. In this data set, you have a list of 30 projects that ran campaigns on Kickstarter. For each one, we have the URL, what category it was in, the end date of the funding period. I'm going to make that column wider so I can see the date. The goal, how much money they were trying to raise, and the pledged amount, how much money the backers pledged to the project. So there are 4 questions. We're going to do the first 2. Question 1, how many of the projects shown are in each of the categories shown below? So that's food, short film, and narrative. So yes, in this data set, we only have 30 projects. We could just count, but in the module, you'll have over 30,000 projects, so you'll need a formula. We're going to use a COUNTIF. A COUNTIF counts the number of cells in a given range that match some criterion. In this case, I want to count how many of the categories listed match the word food. So COUNTIF, and the range is the range of categories. And I put a comma, and then I refer to the cell that has the word food in it. So let me scroll back over so we can see what's going on. So we counted how many cells in B5 to B34 match the cell G14, which has the word food in it. Now, if we want to drag this down, we need to lock some things. We need to lock the starting and ending row of the range. That way, when we drag it down, we'll still be referring to the same range. So there were 4 projects that were short films and 0 that were narratives. I'm actually going to show you a different way to write that formula that I think is a little bit easier. So I'm zooming out so we can see. So I had COUNTIF this range, but let's delete that. Delete those 3. So again, I'm going to COUNTIF, but instead of giving the specific range, I'm just going to tell it to look in the whole column. And that can work here because I don't have anything else in the column except for this data set. And my criterion is the same. All right, so let's zoom back in and look at that. So count how many times in column B we see the word food. 2. Now I can just drag it down. I don't have to lock anything because it's still referring to column B. Okay, let's look at question 2. How many of the short film projects from 2010 had a pledged value greater than or equal to the goal value? So now we're going to be checking for 3 things. The category being short film, the year being 2010, and whether or not there was more money pledged than the goal. I want to be able to see my formula and my data as much as possible on the screen. So I'm going to freeze the panes right here. That just gives me a little more control over the scrolling. So I'm going to start with a COUNTIFs because I have multiple things that I want to check for in my count. So similar to before, I'm going to count how many projects have short film in the category column. So I'm just selecting the whole column and a reference to short film. Now there's 2 other things I want to check, but for now I'm just going to close out this function and we'll come back to them in a second. So right now I'm getting that there were 4 that matched short film in the category. So I have 2 other things I want to check. I want to check the year and I want to check whether pledged is greater than goal. I have the end date, and one thing that will make this easier to check the year is if I had the year alone in a cell. So I'm going to insert a column that I call year. And I'm just going to use a function called year. So it'd give me the year out of this date. It didn't format it the way I wanted. I'm going to change that formatting to be just general. So again, making this end date column a little wider, I can see that that was the year 2012. So it pulls out just the year. So now I can go back to my COUNTIF function, COUNTIFs function that I was writing, and I can add the second check. So how many projects are there? I already have the category equal to short film, but now I'm also going to check that the year in column D is 2010. Okay, I have one more, so there are two of those. I have one more thing to check, whether pledged was greater than or equal to goal. So again, I'm going to add another column. I'll call that pledged greater than or equal to goal. And there's lots of ways to do this. I'm going to write an if function. I'm going to check to see if pledged was greater than or equal to goal, comma. If it is, I want that cell to have a 1 in it. Another comma. If it's not, I want that cell to have a 0. So I drag that down. So I can see the first project listed did not meet its goal. The second project did. So now I can use that column as another check in my statement, the third and final check in my statement. So I already have checking that the category is short film and the year is 2010. And now I'm going to add that I want to check to see is column G equal to a 1. So it's going to tell me how many projects meet all 3 of those criteria. And the answer is 2. So there were 2 projects that were short films that ended in 2010, and they both met their goal. Now you're going to get to try this in question 3, and then you're going to take your answer from one of the purple cells. You're going to take the formula you wrote, and you're going to paste it in the right place in D2L. Have fun!